They laughed at her tattoo, mocking the eagle on her arm. But when a Marine colonel walked in and removed his coat, the entire bar fell silent. What happened next changed everything. The small town of Cedar Ridge lived in its routines, a quiet place known more for its stillness than for its noise. The evenings were predictable. The local bar, Murphy's, filled with townsfolk who wanted to end the day with laughter, beer, and gossip. It was a place where everybody knew each other, and strangers were rare. That evening, a new figure appeared at the door. The hinges creaked as it opened, and Sergeant Emily Carter stepped inside. She wore her Marine uniform, crisp and perfectly pressed. Her boots carried the faint polish of someone who took her discipline everywhere she went. But what caught eyes more than the uniform was the tattoo on her forearm. An eagle wings spread, carrying an olive branch. The bar's chatter slowed, heads turned, glasses froze halfway to lips. People stared. Emily felt the shift, though she pretended not to. She had grown used to it. The uniform carried its own weight, but the tattoo always drew longer looks. Some admired, some mocked, and some didn't understand at all. She paused at the threshold, letting her eyes adjust to the dim yellow light inside. The air smelled of beer and smoke. The wooden floor creaked under her boots, and the walls were filled with old photos of football teams, long forgotten. Emily stepped forward, each step steady, controlled, measured. The bartender, a man with gray in his beard, gave her a nod. "Evening, Sergeant." His voice was casual, carrying no judgment. Emily gave a small smile. She liked that. Recognition, without fuss. But she could already sense the tension in the room. A few men at the corner table were watching her with smirks tugging at their mouths. Their jackets were worn, their faces unshaven, their laughter too loud. She had seen men like them before, not in appearance, but in spirit, the kind who found courage in numbers and in drink. Emily slid her duffel bag under the stool and sat, with her back straight. She ordered a water, then a beer. She wasn't here to fight. She wasn't here to prove anything. She only wanted a drink and a moment of quiet. But quiet rarely lasted long when people saw the ink on her arm. The tattoo was more than ink. Each feather held meaning. Each line was a name, a story, a loss. Emily had it done after her first tour in Afghanistan. It was her memorial to Corporal Daniels, a man who had pulled her out of fire when she thought the end had come. He hadn't made it back home. The eagle carried his memory, along with the memory of others she had served with, comrades whose faces still came to her at night, in dreams that felt too real. Civilians rarely understood. To them, a tattoo was art or rebellion. To Emily, it was history. It was grief carved into skin. She sipped her water. The bar grew quieter. The group of men in the corner leaned forward, whispering and snickering. Finally, one of them raised his voice. "Hey, Marine, what's that bird on your arm? Looks funny." Laughter followed, sharp and mean. Emily's jaw tightened, but she stayed still. She had learned long ago that silence could be louder than shouting. She lifted her glass, drank slowly, and gave him nothing but calm eyes. The laughter faltered, then returned, thinner this time. The man pushed again. "You get that to scare people, or just to show off?" Emily didn't answer. Inside, her mind went back to the desert, the burning heat, the sound of gunfire in the distance, the weight of the gear, the way her squad had looked to each other for strength. She remembered nights when humor kept them alive, and mornings when silence meant survival. Her tattoo was not for their eyes. It was for those who never returned. The group grew louder. They weren't brave, but alcohol made them think they were. One leaned forward, red-faced. "Bet you think you're some kind of hero. A tattoo and a uniform, that's all you've got." His friends laughed again, though the sound was forced. Some patrons looked uncomfortable. A young man at a nearby table whispered, "I don't think she wants trouble." His friend nodded. Emily stayed still. She felt the old anger rise, but she pressed it down. Control was her strength. She wasn't here to explain. She wasn't here to defend. She was here to be, and that was enough. The bartender's eyes met hers. He gave her a small nod, quiet solidarity. Emily returned it with the smallest curve of her lips. The eagle on her arm caught the dim light. Its wings seemed alive, frozen, mid-flight. She remembered the hands that had carried her when she thought she would not make it. The tattoo was a reminder that courage wasn't loud. It was steady. It endured. The door creaked again. The bar turned its eyes to the newcomer. A tall man entered, shoulders broad, his coat pressed, his steps deliberate. He moved like someone who had carried command for years. His gaze swept the room, steady, unreadable, but carrying weight. Conversations stopped. Even the jukebox's songs seemed too quiet. Emily recognized the bearing before she recognized the man. A Marine, higher rank. The kind of authority that filled a room without a word. The men in the corner stiffened. Their smirks faltered. Something in the man's presence unsettled them. He walked toward Emily, each step measured, his face calm, but firm. When he stopped beside her, he removed his coat. Beneath it, his uniform showed his medals, ribbons, and insignia. The bar seemed to exhale. Respect replaced mockery. Silence replaced laughter. The colonel didn't speak right away. He only looked at Emily, his eyes holding hers with a depth of understanding. Then he gave a small nod, slow and deliberate. It was a Marine's nod, silent, but heavy with meaning. Emily's chest tightened. It was recognition, solidarity, validation without words. The men in the corner shrank into their seats. Their earlier arrogance drained from them, replaced with shame. They looked down, muttering awkward apologies. They didn't dare speak loud. The other patrons whispered, but now their voices carried respect, not ridicule. The colonel finally spoke, his voice calm but firm. Carry yourself with dignity. You've earned every bit of respect this room owes you. The words were aimed at Emily, but the message struck the others too. It was a rebuke, soft yet sharp, that no one could ignore. Emily nodded, her posture steady, her pride quiet. She didn't need to say anything more. The room had shifted. Her silence, her composure, her tattoo had spoken louder than any argument. The night carried on, but it wasn't the same. The bar was quieter, more respectful. People looked at Emily differently now. The mocking was gone. In its place was recognition. She sipped her drink. Calm as ever. The colonel stayed nearby, his presence like a silent wall of authority. The men in the corner whispered among themselves, their bravado gone. They had learned something tonight. Respect isn't demanded, it is earned. Dignity commands attention. Courage is not always loud. Sometimes it is silent, steady, unbroken. Emily Carter knew this truth well. She carried it on her arm. She carried it in her posture. And now, the whole room had seen it too. When the time came, Emily stood, her movements slow and deliberate. People gave her space, some nodding, some whispering, softly to one another. The colonel gave her one last nod before leaving. A final recognition, a silent salute of sorts. Emily returned it with gratitude in her eyes. She walked toward the door, her tattoo catching the light one last time. The eagle seemed to spread its wings in flight. She stepped into the cool night. The bar behind her carried a new story, one that would be told in whispers for years. A story not of conflict, but of dignity, not of shouting, but of composure. Emily Carter had walked through mockery and left with respect, not because she demanded it, but because she embodied it, and that was enough. As Emily walked away from Murphy's, the night air felt sharp and fresh. The street was quiet, only the hum of a distant car breaking the silence. She pulled her coat tighter around her shoulders and allowed her mind to wander back. Afghanistan returned in fragments. The sandstorms that cut across the desert, the sound of helicopters thundering overhead, the silence after firefights, when the world seemed too heavy to bear, and then the faces of comrades who had laughed with her, fought beside her, and some who never came back. She paused under a street lamp, the yellow glow catching the ink on her arm. The eagles seemed alive again. Each feather carried weight, each line etched with pain and pride. She remembered Corporal Daniel's last words, remembered Torres' laughter even in danger, remembered the quiet nods exchanged during long nights, when words felt unnecessary. Civilians would never fully understand, she knew, but they didn't need to. What mattered was that she carried those memories forward, protecting them as fiercely as she had once protected her squad. Her tattoo was not decoration, it was her vow. Emily reached her small rented room at the edge of town. She set her duffel down and sat by the window. The night stretched endlessly, stars scattered across the dark sky. She exhaled slowly, letting the silence wrap around her. She thought about the bar, about the men who had mocked her, and then shrank under the weight of respect. She thought about the colonel, his quiet authority, his silent validation. The lesson of the evening was clear, and it wasn't just for them. It was for her too. She realized that dignity didn't just protect her. It taught others. It shifted environments. It left ripples. The men at that corner table would carry the memory of tonight longer than they would admit. The patrons would tell the story, passing it like a quiet reminder that respect is earned by character, not demanded by noise.